Ali, hedge fund manager and trustee of Midland Doctors. Just to take you back to the times of donations and how other friends and people in your network were involved, what was that like?
Well, when it came to the actual donations, I decided that I would pledge that I will go to Pakistan and work in the camps. When I said that, I offered out the idea to my friends that I'm not going to do a walk or a sponsored swim or any of these things. I don't have medical skills, but I will actually go volunteer and work in the camps. And to this end, I use this as encouragement for people to donate and also to be able to trust that their money would reach the recipients.
And what was it specifically about what was happening in 2010 that really had an impact on you and your friends and colleagues?
Well, certainly on me, because I was born in Pakistan and I saw these people, clinging on to their families in knee deep in water. And, I came to England in 1976 and for a few twists of fate, it could have been me. I really thought, because we saw floods and stuff when I was a kid in Pakistan. And so to see that, it really touched a nerve. And then I thought, I have to do something about this. But once I set up the donation page and made the calls, some of the people that I called said, we'll come too, especially when I said I'm going to go and work. And so we had people like Shahzad Amir volunteered immediately. We had Abid Hussain, he volunteered immediately. Ivor O'Toole volunteered immediately. So suddenly we had this gang of people that were willing to go work in the camps. And of course, they then reached out to their networks. And suddenly the thing grew upon itself. To some extent, it even became competitive, because which one of us could get the bigger donations. And as the donations racked up on the page, we saw some competition from city people trying to beat the previous donation, and this was only wonderful for the Midland Doctors.
And as this was happening, and as you were accumulating the donations, etc., the flood relief campaign was moving along, and you were working alongside Midland Doctors. What was that like?
We actually started working much more closely with the doctors. We started getting to know each one of them. We invited them to a large event that was held by Bank of America, where the doctors gave speeches and actually connected with our audience. We also had some sizable corporate donations, and the doctors came to receive those. One of the bankers had an idea to ask some of the market counterparties to hold charity days, which they tend to normally do at Christmas time, but they would hold exceptional ones in relation to this particular disaster. And those donations were then channeled into Midland Doctors, and this is what really provided critical mass and suddenly took us to a higher level of contribution. And the doctors themselves took it upon themselves personally to come in and meet those donors. So with each big donor, there was generally a story attached, and the doctors really felt that they should come and meet those people personally, and then also provide some level of comfort that their money would actually reach the intended.
And can you name the donors that were really influential and appreciative and helpful at this time?
Absolutely. I mean, there were lots of individual donors. One story, I mean, this is a little anecdote. A very good friend of mine that ran a private fund in Singapore. When I called him and I emailed him and I said to him, I'm raising money for the flood relief work in Pakistan and I'm going to go there and work in the camps. And his response was, I don't think you should do it, let's have a conversation. And to which I was, oh my goodness, he's going to lecture me for an hour. So I phoned him up and he spoke to me for about 30 to 45 minutes. And he said, you shouldn't go. Your value is you're a banker, you're good at making money and trading and so forth. You should make a donation of your trading ability, which is your real value, rather than going there. And I said, well, if I go there, I might inspire others to give money. And so we had this long conversation back and forth, and he kind of lectured me for about 30 minutes, after which he made a donation of $50,000.
Wow.
And suddenly things like that became, stories like that I told to some of the other donors, and it became a little bit competitive. But it really showed, regardless of the opinion of how people can contribute, the generosity of their own came to the forefront. Donating your own money is one thing, but being given the responsibility to take care of other people's donations, it really was a huge responsibility, and it weighed heavily on us, which is why it's absolutely critical for us that we had the right partner. And not only had the right partner, I mean, there are many charities with great reputation and so forth, but some a partner in which we knew the people personally. And then that for Sajjad, having Dr. Asrar as the brother in the charity, for us was a personal connection which gave us extra comfort.
One of the things, stories I remember is there was a discussion going on with one of the brokerage houses, and suddenly we were asked to involve and engage, and we were asked about certain aspects of the project and the flood relief campaign, and we were able to get that information to you very, very quickly as to what was going on the ground, which was probably maybe more of a connection that you could get without naming names with the bigger charities.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could show, we could illustrate individual examples where, in the case of the hospital, certain cases, how they've been treated, what the issue was, how it was resolved, how we helped a particular village, how we helped a particular family, and the doctors had all of that information to hand. And for one of the reasons for myself going to the camps was I wanted to be able to go there, witness how the money was spent, and be able to bring some of that back and show the donors. And we did that certainly with ICAP, and ICAP made a subsequent donation after having seen the footage of some of the work that we had done. I don't think the work ever stops, and the fact that we have these stories to tell means that these genuine stories actually reach further potential donors, and that's what keeps the hospital alive.
There's also the connectivity of the funding to the actual impact. That's also something quite nice for donors, I expect.
I think given the size of the charity, I always describe Midland Doctors as being big enough to make a difference, but small enough to not get pulled into the politics. And therefore we're able to show directly how a donation is spent, or how a donation is used and how it makes an impact. I mean, with no disrespect to the large charities, they tend to be multinational organizations, and sometimes you make a donation and you don't actually see which part of the world or which individual that's spent on. We are small enough to be able to demonstrate that, and I think those stories really provide a sense of gratification for the donors. And I think it's very important that they see that their money is being spent wisely, and they actually see the results, because people feel good when they see results.
So there's a really interesting story that you've mentioned to me before regarding one of the companies. If you could just share that story and how they're involved and the impact and the surprise.
So once we got some of the corporations involved, and we suggested, in fact, they held charity days and we encouraged them to hold charity days. One of the companies, Creditex, made a substantial amount on their charity day. And at this point they were looking how to distribute the donations for the flood relief. And they were speaking to established charities as well as taking a look at us. And I spoke to a senior guy at Creditex, and I said, look, this is a charity that you can trust. This is a charity that is, like I said, big enough to make a difference, but not big enough to be getting involved politically. And to convince him, I decided that I would invite the doctors down to personally meet with the people at Creditex. And after some convincing, I got Dr. Ifti, Dr. Asrar, and a few others to come down. And once they met with the people at Creditex, I think Creditex were very quickly convinced that this is a genuine charity, and they were happy and comfortable that their donation, their sizable donation, would reach the intended recipients. And at that point, Creditex presented a very large check to the charity, to which even the doctors were very, very surprised at the size of that.
Could you mind just telling us how much it was that Creditex gave, and anything about the sum as well?
Well, this is the actual the punchline of the part was when I asked the doctors to come to London. I didn't disclose the amount. I said it's a substantial donation, and I think it's genuinely worthwhile you coming to meet these donors personally. And so the doctors made the long journey, and ultimately Creditex delivered a check for $400,000. It was a staggering contribution.
And you noted the face of the chairman at the time.
Well, Dr. Ifti almost fell off his chair. I mean, I remember his comment. He said, "This is the happiest I've been since my child was born." That was the comment that he made. But it also shows how much it means to our chairman, Dr. Ifti. I mean, he's so dedicated to the project, and I've actually seen him personally in action, both at the camps, at the hospital. And I remember, I mean, there's another little anecdote. When we actually went to Pakistan to work in the camps, We spent a lot of time in the camps, and then we traveled north. And when we traveled north, we went to Muzaffarabad to have a look at the foundations that were being laid for the hospital. And after 2 grueling weeks, we decided that we would go and stay in Islamabad for a day or two, and maybe even relax for a day. And suddenly Dr. Ifti disappeared. And he came back 2 hours later, and I said, "Where did you go?" "Oh, I had to go and do an operation." So the chap simply does not stop. If he has a spare 45 minutes in Pakistan, he might pop into a hospital to do a random operation. So that's the level of dedication that our chairman has, and for that I raise my hat to him.
So we're just talking about how did you accumulate the funds for the hospital?
Initially, the funds we raised were for flood relief, but as the amount of donations accelerated, to some extent we switched our focus to longer term solutions, both for the flood victims as well as generally for the earthquake victims from 2005. And we spoke to some of our donors and said that we were going to build the village as a sustainable project, but we also want to contribute some of that donation towards the hospital. And after that first visit, we came back and revisited some of the donors. So ICAP, for example, we came back to visit them again, and this time we actually gave them a presentation on the hospital. And ICAP were particularly interested in the postnatal aspect and some of the women's facilities that we were making in the hospital in Muzaffarabad, and for that they made an additional donation. So what happened was, because the donations became so big, we were able to allocate some money to the hospital. But once we actually showed some of the hospital projects that at the time they were just projects that we were thinking about, we were able to get additional donations, which helped to move the hospital along even further. See, now we're at the point where we have a functioning, working hospital, and I think it's time to go and visit some of those donors and show them the fruits of their donations. And I guess the next stage is to make the hospital run itself, and that's going to be by further donations.
I think it's been a humbling experience for all of us involved, the doctors, yourself from the fundraising side of things as well, and your actual involvement on the ground has been absolutely amazing. And in a way, it would be really nice to be able to thank the donors for what's been achieved.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because my involvement on the ground was fetching and carrying. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a construction worker. I can't build a village. I can't go do a cataract operation. And so this is what my friend Khalid was always saying to me: what difference are you actually going to make when you go there? And to be frank, I did a lot of fetching and carrying. I carried sacks and I handed them out and I gave sweets. But the one thing that I took away from it was I was able to bear witness. I was able to see for real, one, the suffering of the people and the things that we were addressing, but secondly, what difference the contributions made. And in addition to that, I feel and I hope that I was able to provide inspiration to the people that made the donation, saying, look, he is the custodian. He is safeguarding our money and ensuring that it gets to the right people. For that, I felt a tremendous responsibility, and I think Ivor and Shahzad and Abid, they all will testify the same, that we felt personally responsible for the donations that the people had given, and therefore it was imperative that we go there and make sure that that it reaches the people that it was intended for. So it was totally humbling when you see the resilience of these people. And I will show you some of the photographs. We are in a camp, and the children had smiles on their faces regardless of the grueling and harrowing encounters they'd been through. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Asrar, for getting me involved. This has been an incredible journey for us, and seeing the work, actually seeing it with our own eyes and how far it's come, has been a humbling experience. I remember when I first reached out to you guys, I knew Sajjad and Dr. Javed, and I considered you guys a bunch of my friends, and now I feel truly part of the Midland Doctors family. And the work we've done so far has been amazing, and long may it continue into the future.
Inshallah. Thank you.